So yesterday, CNN held back-to-back climate change town halls with a number of the 2020 Democratic candidates, and it just went on for hours and hours. And I'd sort of dipped in and out of it during a Twitch live stream that I did last night. It was relatively uneventful, but there were some interesting things that happened. The first one I want to mention, one notable trend, is that it again wasn't great for Joe Biden. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm piling on Biden, because there were also other candidates who have no shot who didn't do well. Like Amy Klobuchar, I don't think did very well during this thing. Kamala Harris, I don't think did well, although she is in fourth place. And I guess you can say she still has a shot. The point is Biden is leading in the polls, and he really didn't have a good climate change town hall. This was 7 hours of back-to-back-to-back town halls with candidates. The idea was a good one, which is let's go in depth on the issue of climate with each candidate. This is a really important issue, and we want to know who can go deep on these topics. Great. Kamala Harris had some weird moments. She had one about plastic and paper straws that was sort of odd. Andrew Yang was asked about quantifying carbon dioxide reduction that we can get from geoengineering, which he has pushed and talked about. He wasn't able to answer that. Okay, some people said it was a stumble. He should have been prepared. Biden really didn't do well. He was again not answering questions clearly. And there was this moment when what was clearly a planned attack question was put to Joe Biden. Take a look.
Have to ask, how can we trust you to hold these corporations and executives accountable for their crimes against humanity when we know that tomorrow you are holding a high dollar fundraiser hosted by Andrew Goldman, a fossil fuel executive?
He's not a fossil fuel executive, I'm told. He is not a fossil fuel executive. And the fact of the matter is that what we talk about is what are we going to do about those corporations? What have we done? And everywhere along the way, for example, I've argued and pushed for us suing those executives who are engaged in pollution, those companies who are engaged in pollution.
So Biden says, wait, Andrew Goldman isn't a fossil fuel executive. And the relevance to this entire conversation is that Joe Biden pledged not to take campaign funds from fossil fuel executives. And if indeed he is involved with Andrew Goldman, fossil fuel executive, and money is being raised and money is being donated, that would appear to be a violation of Joe Biden's pledge. Now, it was later sort of clarified weirdly by Anderson Cooper, not by Joe Biden, that Andrew Goldman is not a fossil fuel executive, but he is a fossil fuel investor. So technically, Joe Biden's pledge remains in force, I guess, because he is not taking the money from executives, but rather from investors. It's one of these situations, though, where you really need to understand the dynamics of what took place. First of all, this was by every indication one of these planned attacks on Biden, but it was effective. And the clarification came later. The clarification came from Anderson Cooper rather than from Biden himself. Substantively, I don't think that anything shocking was revealed at this town hall about Biden or anyone else. But the longer format for each candidate does let us get more of a sense of how deep their knowledge is. The knowledge in climate from lots of the candidates is, quite frankly, not very deep. And I think that that should alarm all of us, given that it is such a major humanitarian crisis and an issue of national security and an issue of geopolitics. And it's disappointing. Now, I'm not saying Trump has any better idea. Trump writes the entire thing off as a hoax created by the Chinese. That's a disaster as well. At least the people on yesterday's stages acknowledge the problem that there is. But this was not a good moment for Joe Biden. Then just bad luck and timing by Biden. I actually feel bad about this. He burst a blood vessel in his eye during the event, which was noticeable on television. That led to the obviously predictable slew of allegations that Joe Biden is sick, sort of like the Hillary Parkinson's type stuff. That's all completely to be expected. And there are sort of two perspectives on this anti-Biden stuff that are growing on the left. There are those who are against Biden because he's simply a centrist. People are more progressive and they say, I want someone more progressive, and Biden's sort of a corporate center-left Democrat. There are others who oppose Joe Biden because they believe that Joe Biden is not electable. In other words, that he could not beat Donald Trump in the general election. Now, the politics part, I understand. Biden is not nearly the most progressive candidate. In fact, he's one of the most centrist candidates. That is simply a reality. The Biden can't beat Trump stuff requires a little bit of fortune telling and seeing into the future. But if you look at the hypothetical polling matchups right now against Trump, Biden is routinely doing the best, period. And the reason why is not his progressivism, clearly, or his lack thereof. It's a demographic issue more than anything else. Older people vote much more than younger people, and they vote much more reliably than younger people. And when you look at the demographics of who is supporting Joe Biden, you understand that any likely voter model that accounts for how likely people are to vote does help Joe Biden, and Joe Biden in the hypothetical matchups does the best against Donald Trump than anybody else. Now, Bernie's not far behind. Warren is not far behind Bernie, but it's important to understand where those numbers come from. And I know that every time we talk about this, I get emails from people saying, David, you are drastically underestimating that young people this time around are going to be the difference maker. I hope that's the case. I hope that that's the case. But every election cycle, we hear that. And rarely does it actually become a reality. Older people are the reliable voters and the younger people simply are not. I hope it is different, but understand why a likely voter model would not assume that, because we talk about it every election cycle and it basically doesn't end up happening. Now, let's talk more broadly about one of the macro issues that is a huge red herring in the discussions of climate.